We need to find out who's telling the truth. Hey everybody, Uncle Rich here for Who's Telling the Truth. Let's see, this is show number 119. Oh, we got that a little bit under, but it's show 119. And today's date is December 7th, 2015. It's Pearl Harbor Day. So we've got an explosive show for you. And guys, the name of this show is called R.I.C.O. I don't want you to think it's one of my Italian uncles, no. What we want to talk about tonight is the racketeering and influence corrupt organizations. And guys, I'm telling you, this is how we're going to turn the climate deniers into believers. Once you drag them into court, they're going to start singing a different tune. And we're going to do the same thing to the fossil fuel industry as we did with the tobacco industry. And they're going to have to pay. They're going to pay one way or the other. So rather than make it easy, they want to drag it out and they want to, they want to fight and stall. And when you look at the Congress that we have, they just want to make it impossible. But drag them into court and they'll start singing a different tune. But guys, on tonight's show, before we get started on that, I have to mention what's been going on in this country, And I mean, first of all, we had a Christian terrorist. That's right, a Christian terrorist goes in and shoots up a Planned Parenthood. Yeah. So what? So the Muslims say, wait a minute, we'll outdo you. So the Muslims go and they shoot up a work site. Guys, this nonsense has got to stop. And this is why I always say, and I wish people would try to get this in their head, religion is the root of all evil. I know, hey, a lot of people just hit the off button. That's fine. But you know what? Reality hurts. And that's what we're here for. We're here to tell the truth. Judy, can you put up the bug? And guys, when you have invisible friends in the sky, and everybody's got different invisible friends, and my invisible friend is better than your invisible. Enough. Let's start dealing with reality, and let's start dealing with how we can respect each other. I mean, this nonsense, and then, of course, Fox TV, holy mackerel. They're beating this, it's unbelievable. I mean, I'm almost thinking about going out and buying a gun. Isn't that ridiculous? But this is what they want to do. They want to drum up the hate, and most importantly, the fear. They want to scare people so much they run down to maximize the profits of the gun manufacturers. This is crazy. This is Looney Tune stuff. And then we got Donald Trump out there. Holy mackerel. This guy wants to have mosques under surveillance. Yeah. Could you imagine if churches were under surveillance? Holy mackerel. Jesus wouldn't be too happy, that's for sure. All right, but guys, I had to get that off my chest. And, when you have invisible friends, you got problems. And it creates problems. And, maybe the way to settle this problem is from now on, with churches or mosques or synagogues or anything, no more tax credits. Yeah, no more. From now on, you're treated like a business, just like every other business. And we're not going to let you hide behind your invisible friend and take tax deductions and not pay taxes. Wouldn't that be fair? I think everybody would start singing a different tune then, wouldn't they? But guys, before we get into the R.I.C.O investigation, we want to give out a final shout out to our brothers and sisters, and I love using that socialist term, our brothers and our sisters and our uncles and our aunts and our cousins and everybody else that's fighting to join the union, mainly the service and maintenance workers at the Danbury Hospital, so they can be treated with dignity and be entitled to a living wage. And so guys, like I said, this is the vote is going to be this coming Friday, and we're going to play this. This is the last clip that the AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, has put on TV. So Judy, can we have clip number 1, please? I got no volume. There, what? No volume, Kurt.
Objective observer, that makes me very angry.
But medical techs and therapists formed a union and are fighting for a strong contract so they can speak up for their patients. Tell management to reach a fair settlement with these hands-on healers.
Patients before profits.
Guys, once again, I'm trying to bring the stills up on my computer, so excuse me. But, you know, patience before profits. And I'm sure the gun industry is very happy with what's been going on with the hate and the fear that Fox and the right is trying to get everybody to buy. But, you know, the next, now we have, let's see, got a little ahead of myself here. The next one is a still. And guys, I want you to take a good look at this still. Judy, can you bring up number 02, please? Guys, look what happens as union membership declines, inequality rises. And guys, look, go back to 1928, when union membership was almost at 50%. And look at how it's declined now to where it's just over 10%. But what's happened on the other side of the coin? The share of income going to the top. Look at that. Look at the diversion. Judy, can you come back to me? So guys, you know, you see, divide and conquer. You see you see where the money's not going, to the middle class. And isn't that what we're fighting for? The middle class, your friends and your neighbors and the people that are going to take care of you when you check into the hospital. Isn't this what everybody wants? But no, if you watch Fox News, they want you to think that it's more important to give the CEOs and the management the lion's share of the money. Why? I don't know why, because they're greedy, that's why. And guys, we're going to show you why we need to have good people in the hospital with the next still. So Judy, let's have number 3. And guys, you can see what an effect Obamacare has had on the insurance industry. So the amount of people uninsured has gone from 18% down to under 12%. So wouldn't you say that that's a 33% decrease? Judy, can you come back to me? More people have insurance. More people go to the hospital. We need more good people to take care of their friends and neighbors. It's all really simple. I mean, you don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to figure this one out. And guys, this next clip, this is number 04. And Judy, can you bring this up, guys? This is terrific. This is from the American Federation of Teachers. And this is a billboard, a mounted billboard that they've been driving around the city of Danbury. Judy, can you come back to me? So guys, talk about getting somebody's attention. That's the way to do it. But you know what? Let's take it one step further. Let's take that billboard truck and let's drive it up to the CEO's house. And let's drive it back and forth and back until his kids say, "Dad, what are you doing? What are you doing to our friends and neighbors and the people that are trying to take care of us?" You got to stop this nonsense. And if that doesn't work, you know what? Maybe it calls for another candlelight vigil. Nothing violent, nothing, nice. Sit there and sing nice songs until finally you humiliate these people to the point where you shame them. You shame them to the point where if they're any type of person, they're gonna have to do the right thing. And that's all life is about, doing the right thing. Is this so hard? No. But if you're a Republican, it's impossible. Why? Because you have to follow the Koch Brothers agenda. And what's the Koch Brothers agenda? Everything for them and nothing for anybody else. It's that simple. They love America and they hate Americans. It's as simple as that. All right, now we're going to get to the meat of the matter. Now we're going to show you how the RICO statutes can really make a difference. And the first clip that we're going to do, wait, did I do that? Yeah. Oh, no, I'm sorry. First of all, Judy, let's go to still number 20. This is they're beautiful. Judy's on the ball today, guy. First, let's look at the definition of the RICO Act. And the RICO law refers to the prosecution and defense of individuals who engage in organized crime. In 1970, Congress passed the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations, RICO Act, in an effort to combat mafia groups. All right, Judy, can you come back to me? Guys, the fossil fuel industry makes the mafia look like a bunch of amateurs. What these guys, I'm telling you, by the end of this show, you are gonna be so pissed. You're gonna say, I can't wait to see what happens in court. All right, so the first clip we're gonna play, it's with Tom Hartman, and this is Exxon lied and the planet died. But the one thing I want you to pay attention to, he's got a couple of conservatives on the panel. And guys, listen how the conservative brain thinks. And when you see this woman, Chris Ullman, you're gonna say, what's wrong with you? And you know, the thing is, she's using the Koch brothers talking points, but they haven't updated them. And they sound so ridiculous. And I tell you, really, the whole conservative issue is ridiculous. And that's what we're here for, to expose it. Because what they do is they take advantage of the simple folk. That's right. You know, we were talking about, we're going to be talking about how the tobacco industry took advantage of people. The fossil fuel industry wants to take advantage of the planet. They don't care. They don't care about your kids or your they don't care about their kids or their grandkids. All they care about is maximizing profits. So guys, we're going to start with Tom Hartman and Judy. Can we have clip number 21, please?
The community is concerned about the quality of care at Danbury and New Milford hospitals.
When you only get 2 stars out of 5 on patient care from an objective observer, that makes
Welcome back. Still with us, Scott Greer, Chuck Rocha, and Chris Ullman. And let's get back to it. Democratic presidential hopeful Senator Bernie Sanders joined a growing number of representatives, members of Congress, and lawyers calling for a federal investigation into ExxonMobil. He wrote a letter yesterday to Attorney General Loretta Lynch, writing, ExxonMobil knew the truth about fossil fuels and climate change and lied to protect their business model at the expense of the planet. Which sounds a lot like what the tobacco lobby was doing for 50 years until the Department of Justice successfully charged Big Tobacco with racketeering. Big Tobacco lied and people died. So isn't it time that we charge Exxon and Koch Industries and the other shill research front groups that they pay with racketeering under the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act, the RICO Act?
I think that it's unique that you have a politician who has been a standard bearer of sticking to his guns like Bernie has throughout his entire career. But there's a lot of people on the left like me who's been talking about the planet and talking about the environment. And what we're seeing in politics and how that kind of proliferates into the everyday life of people is when you talk to people through our political surveys that we've been doing about the water and about the air, people are starting to pick this up. And now that gas prices have went down, they're like, why can't we be doing more to have more renewables? And who is to blame for all of this? When guys, where I fish out in the Everglades now, the water keeps rising, it's getting more salty and the fish are dying. They're like, there has to be a reason. And these are good old rednecks like me who are like, this just ain't right. So I think it's resonating a lot more.
Yeah, people are waking up, Chris. Don't you think?
Good idea. Let's go after ExxonMobil because, you know, just like cigarettes, if I don't have gas in my car and my kid gets sick, I'm going to put him on the back of a horse or wait for some solar-powered car to take him to the doctor. I mean, we're talking about...
What does that have to do with prosecuting them for lying to us for 50 years?
Well, you want to go and you want...
You think if they get prosecuted, they're going to stop delivering gas?
Destroy the gasoline industry to...
No. I want to destroy the lie and deception industry. The gasoline industry is fine. I'm talking about the people...
No, you can't...
ExxonMobil, in 1977, their scientists came to them and said, we're heating the planet. We've got a decade to do something about it. ExxonMobil funded some of the best research, the early research in the 70s, late 70s and early 80s. And then in 88, they did this complete 180, and they fired all their own scientists, and they started funding organizations that had been working with the tobacco industry, including Fred Singer and his group, to go out and lie about what they knew to be true. That's a crime.
And if this information came out, which I'm dubious about it anyway, to say, who would have stopped using gasoline?
Well, ExxonMobil had a plan.
About throwing grandma off the cliff.
ExxonMobil had a plan to transition themselves. I mean, BP was doing the same thing, beyond petroleum, to move into renewables. But they decided, hey, we'll make more money with the we've got 1 billion tons of oil in the ground.
And listen, America, what we're talking about here is not having the ability to heat grandma's home.
No, it's not that. We're talking about a corporation lying to us for 40 years.
I mean, come on. For 40 years, people didn't realize that fossil fuels led to some pollution.
Global warming, specifically, which is what
I do have one question. Do you think that
people who watch Fox News still don't realize that?
Do you think we'll solve climate change by hitting Exxon with RICO charges?
I think that it would go a long step towards shutting down things like the Heartland Institute and the American Legislative Exchange Council, all these organizations that are funded by either ExxonMobil or Koch Industries or the Koch Brothers or one of the front groups associated with other fossil fuel billionaires. Yeah, I think it would, because then the United States would not be literally the only country in the world
mainly going after
that doesn't acknowledge
groups that have an opposing point of view.
It's going after the people who are lying.
But it's not actually cleaning up the planet.
No, well, the Republican Party in the United States is the only political party in the world that denies climate change is caused by burning fossil fuels.
Guys, it's unbelievable. They don't care that they lied. They want to perpetuate the fraud. What's wrong with these people? And you saw the kid. Well, how is this going to solve the problem? Well, first you have to address the problem. You have to admit that it exists. And then once you do that, then we could start to address it. But you saw that woman. Holy mackerel. Talk about a foxtitude. I mean, she sold her soul a long time ago. And somebody's got to sit her down and say, honey, you got to change your talk. You got to teach her the new talking points. Oh, wait a minute. They don't have new talking points. My mistake. Right, Uncle Joe? Hey, I forgot to say hi to all my Facebook friends. Holy mackerel. What a bunch of Fruit Loops. But guys, Judy, if you could put the our Facebook page up. But guys, the next clip, we're going to show you Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. And this is on a call-in. And this is somebody that asked him on a Q&A. And so, Judy, we're going to play clip number 22, and just listen to what he has to say. Clip number 20.
Both of you. We're going to get to our next question, which is from Tim on Google+. We would like to know your thoughts on why so many people do not believe scientists on climate change. Senator Whitehouse, I know this is something that you've said a lot about, so we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, you go all the way back to the tobacco fight, and the tobacco industry created a kind of false parallel science to go alongside the real science and try to compete with it. They had the advantage that they didn't have to win the fight. All they had to do was create enough doubt that people kept smoking. And so they created the Tobacco Institute, supposed to sound so academic. Well, the polluters have gotten a lot more sophisticated since then. But this vast denial apparatus that propagates the false doubt, that props up the phony science, that gets these yahoos who can't survive peer-reviewed scrutiny onto Fox News, onto the cable shows, saying that they're scientists, they create an artificial conflict about this, and that's why I think there's doubt. A lot of people haven't seen through the scam that's being perpetrated. So that's one of the reasons I hope that we get another lawsuit out of the Department of Justice, like the one that they brought against the tobacco industry, that showed that that whole fraudulent scam was a racketeering enterprise and held them accountable for it.
It's a racketeering enterprise. Hold them accountable. Guys, they've been getting away, putting carbon in the air without paying for it. That's right. You know, could you imagine if you owned a business and you just dumped your sewage into a local stream rather than having it processed? You say, well, you know, it's important for the shareholders. We need the profits. No. And guys, they're only going to have to pay for the problems they created. They're going to have to pay one way or the other. So why are you going to fight it? Now, the next clip is Sheldon Whitehouse on the floor of the Senate. And guys, he does a beautiful job. And first we're going to play a part one. And the name of this clip is It's Time to Wake Up. So Judy, let's have clip number 23, please.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to speak for up to 20 minutes as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Mr. President, there has been some activity on the Senate floor today regarding the President's Clean Power Plan, with fossil fuel state representatives coming to decry that plan. I would simply note that on October 22nd, in the Wall Street Journal, many of the leaders of America's national security took out an advertisement to say Republicans and Democrats agree, U.S. security demands global climate action. We've had generals and admirals, former national security advisors and directors of national intelligence, secretaries of the Treasury, secretaries of defense, directors of the Central Intelligence Agency, chairman of the National Intelligence Council, governors, senators, undersecretaries of state, many Republicans, all saying that this is important, that it's time for America to lead. And what do we get? We get complaints about America leading. If my friends have a better idea than the Clean Power Plan, I'd be glad to listen. I'm sure we'd all be glad to listen. What is it? What's the other plan? Because if you've got nothing, then you really don't have a seat at the table, and you certainly don't have occasion to criticize what the president is trying to do. Show us something. Anything. What have you got? Where's a Republican bill that even talks about climate change, let alone does anything serious about it? Mr. President, it is truly time for this body to wake up. And not just wake up to climate change, but also to the decades-long purposeful corporate smokescreen of misleading public statements from the fossil fuel industry and its allies on the dangers of carbon pollution. So I'm here for the 116th time seeking an open, honest, and factual debate in Congress about global climate change. the energy industry's top dog, ExxonMobil, number 2 for both revenue and profits among the Fortune 500 of companies, has been getting some bad press lately. 2 independent investigative reports from Inside Climate News and the Los Angeles Times revealed that Exxon's own scientists understood as far back as the late 1970s the effects of carbon pollution on the climate and warned company executives of the potential outcomes for the planet and humankind. But Exxon's own internal report also recognized heading off global warming, and I quote, would require major reductions in fossil fuel combustion. And so what did this fossil fuel company do? Rather than behave responsibly, rather than face up to that truth, rather than lead an effort to stave off catastrophic emerging changes to the climate and the oceans, what Exxon chose to do was to fund and participate in a massive misinformation campaign to protect their business model and their bottom line. This started right at the top. Exxon's former chairman and CEO, Lee Raymond, repeatedly and publicly questioned the science behind climate change, notwithstanding what his own scientists had said. Currently, Raymond claimed in a 1996 speech before the Economic Club of Detroit, 20 years after this work by his own scientists, the scientific evidence, he said, is inconclusive as to whether human activities are having a significant effect on the global climate. Well, there was already an emerging international consensus that unchecked carbon emissions were warming the planet. There was already Exxon's own internal research that showed carbon emissions were warming the planet. And it's gone forward to now, where the latest report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states, quote, warming of the climate system is unequivocal. Unequivocal.
Unequivocal. Does anybody know what that means? That means they want to take control, right, Marty? Right, Marty? They're going to charge us more taxes. I'm going to have to pay for this. Marty, we're all going to have to pay for it because we let them get away with it to begin with. If we would have been smart enough, we could have prevented this a long time ago, but they weren't honest. And why weren't they honest? It was simple. It's to protect their business model. They put profits before the planet. And you sit there and you don't care. And what makes me crazy is the fact that no conservative ever looks anything up. You know, we've got the internet. Use it. We got a call. Let's hope it's a good one. All right, let's see. There we go. Who's telling the truth?
I hope we are, Rich. I just have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
If you're serious about the gasoline and all that, how many of us would be willing, let's say for a week, to not drive our cars and not buy it? We have the economic capacity to put these people out of business. And the other one is, we went to all the trouble about the cigarettes, and people still smoke. And these companies are still making profits. I would love your comments on those 2 things, since they seem to be the primary emphasis right now.
Hold on 1 second. Kurt, are you able to get this? We got him. Okay, I'm sorry. We had a problem with the mic. Can you repeat your question?
Sure. The first one is, would we be willing as consumers, let's give ourselves a week, to not buy gasoline, to stay home and not buy? Just, do you realize the economic effects we would have on the gas companies? But would we be willing to sacrifice that aspect of our lives. And two, R.I.C.O went to all the trouble with these cigarette companies, exposed them, but people still smoke.
Well, yeah, and people, you
so
know,
they're still making a profit. So I would love your comments on those two areas, just from your own personal perspective.
Well, from my own personal perspective is the reason why people smoke is because they're addicted. And you're looking at a former smoking addict.
Okay, but you quit.
Oh, yeah, I quit. Yeah, because the thing is I have logic and reason.
Okay, well, let's give support to those people and help their logic and reason to quit.
Okay, the help is out there. The help is available.
Right.
Okay, so.
Don't smoke.
But well, here's the thing. You want to take away their freedoms?
I mean, my pension actually comes when Reynolds took over General Foods. My pension comes from them still making money.
Okay, well, guess what? Change the people in your pension. You can't do that. You can't divest. You can't get together with the other people from your company and say, hey,
No.
We don't want our money going this way anymore.
My husband who passed away, that was his, he worked for General Foods, which was then taken over by the Reynolds Company, and that money is in funds which pays my or his, what he gave to me as a pension.
Okay, well, you can change, I'm sure that the people in your fund can change the fund. A lot of people are divesting out of coal and oil. A lot of the universities.
But it's not my, it's part of my pension. I'm not in a position I could refuse my pension.
Okay, well, I don't know what to say to you. I mean, I honestly don't know what to say, and I don't think I can solve it here.
Well,
but, I mean, that would be my suggestion to you.
Right, but you chose to stop smoking, which I think is admirable. I really do. But would we, as a consumer, be willing to give up our cars? Let's just say for a week.
Why would you want to do? Why do you think you have to give anything up? We have to change the business model. Don't you understand that? You can go out and buy a Tesla, and you'll never use a drop of gas anymore, and you'll be riding in one of the best cars ever made in the world.
Okay. I could agree with you. I don't drive anymore, but that's okay.
Okay, well, there's an answer to your problem. See, there's different ways to do it. We don't have to necessarily stop on a dime. We've got to make changes. All right, we got to move ahead, otherwise we're never going to finish. But it was nice talking to you, and you can call back later, all right?
Take care.
All right, guys, now, sometimes what do you want me to say? If you don't like where your money is, move it. And if you can't move it, talk to the people who can move it for you. It's that simple. But I mean, when you see all these big corporations saying to the coal companies and to the oil companies, hey fellas, forget it. You're not getting another penny from us anymore. And you see what happens to the gas prices. Look, down at Costco, I think it was $2.07 a gallon for gas. Look what's happening, And I'll tell you, getting back to R.I.C.O, after we strip the fossil fuel companies of parts of their profits, we can use that money to invest in renewables. I mean, it would just compound itself. And look what we'd be doing. We take the money away from the fossil fuel companies and we put it into renewables. Pretty simple, isn't it? All right, now we're going to play part number 2 with Sheldon Whitehouse on the floor of the Senate. So, Judy, let's have clip number 24, please.
Planet panel on climate change states, quote, warming of the climate system is unequivocal. Unequivocal. The current ExxonMobil CEO, Rex Tillerson, still emphasizes uncertainty and goes out of his way to overestimate the costs of taking action. In 2013, he asked, what good is it to save the planet if humanity suffers? All right, someone needs to explain to me how, if we fail to save the planet, humanity does not suffer. I guess it's Exxon's position that they only suffer if we try to save the planet. And at this year's annual shareholders meeting, Mr. Tillerson argued that the world needs to wait, that's always their argument, the world needs to wait for the science to improve, unequivocal is evidently not enough, and to look for solutions to the effects of climate change as they become more clear. More clear. Our oceans are clearly warming and acidifying, and this has been clearly measured. Atmospheric carbon is clearly higher than ever in our species' history on this planet, and this has been clearly measured. In Rhode Island, we've measured nearly 10 inches of sea level rise since the 1930s, right on our shores. What's not clear? And while Exxon was peddling climate denial here in Washington, the LA Times reports, they were using climate models to plan operations in the warming Arctic. Between 1986 and 1992, Exxon's senior ice researcher Ken Crosdale and others studied the effects that global warming would have on Arctic oil operations and reported back to Exxon Brass. They knew that melting ice would lower exploration and development costs. They also knew that higher seas and thawing permafrost would threaten the company's ships and drilling platforms and processing plants and pipelines. So Exxon was challenging the climate models publicly while it was using them privately to guide its own investment decisions. Exxon understood the dangers, but instead of sounding the alarm or trying to help, they chose to sow doubt. Then there are the Exxon front groups. A study out just last month in the peer-reviewed journal Climatic Change says that ExxonMobil paid over $16 million between 1988 and 2005 to a network of phony baloney think tanks and pseudoscience groups that spread misleading claims about climate science. The company's network includes organizations that name themselves after John Locke, James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, and even George C. Marshall. It also includes the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC, which peddles anti-climate legislation in state legislatures. ALEC denies the human contribution to climate change by calling it a historical phenomenon, asserting that the debate will continue on the significance of natural and anthropogenic contributions. The climate denial coming out of ALEC is so egregious, even Shell Oil left the group this summer. And don't forget the paid-for scientists. The Exxon network includes Willie Soon, whose work consistently downplayed the role of carbon pollution in climate change. Well, investigative reporting revealed Dr. Soon received more than $1.2 million from oil and
Dr. Willie Hock Soon, and remember, we did a thing on him a few shows back, received over $1.2 million from the fossil fuel industry to come up with his conclusions. I wonder what kind of conclusions he had. Now, guys, what's the one most important thing that we do on this show? What's the one thing that we say on every show? Be specific and cite your sources, right? So we're not going to make an accusation that Willie Hock Soon got $1.2 million from ExxonMobil. We're going to prove it to you. That's right, because that's what we do. So, Judy, let's have clip number 25, please.
Dr. Soon.
Hello.
Connor Gibson. I work for Greenpeace.
Oh, thank you.
I was wondering who might be funding your grants this year. I know that historically there was some research funded on solar variability in polar bears from the American Petroleum Institute, and ExxonMobil, and Charles and David Koch. I was wondering who might be.
Jim, here's a Greenpeace again, trying to hustle people.
Jim Lakely?
Yeah.
Connor, nice to meet you.
I'd rather not answer this question because you know what you have done. Greenpeace has obtained every information allowed under Freedom of Information Act. You please look back into your own records, okay? Because I'm under no obligation to answer any of your rude questions because I have spoken repeatedly, I have respectfully answered you that no amount of money could influence me. You insist on finding fault with funding. It has nothing to do with the science that I just discussed with you. Thank you again. I think you better leave it there because it's just extremely rude to me. I mean, I'm sorry, I work very hard on my side.
Who provides the funding that goes through Donors Trust to your newer grants?
You please go ask Donor Trust, ask my center. You already obtained your information through Freedom of Information Act, which is very damaging for science. I don't recommend this recipe for anyone. I don't recommend this.
Why don't you want people to know who's paying for the work when you say you can stand by it as credible research, but there's a vested interest funding it?
Dr. Soon has already talked about those issues on the stage today and in the past.
Unbelievable, isn't it? So we made a mistake. He got $1.3 million instead of 1.2. But what did he say? No amount of money will satisfy him. Hey, don't worry. The Koch brothers got plenty. You keep spitting out the BS, they'll keep lining your pockets. Why? Because the little bit of money that they put in your pocket saves them a whole lot more going into their pocket. See how it works, guys? It's like Dave Straight, my buddy Dave Straight. Follow the money. Dave, did we just follow the money? But you know what, guys? You can show Dave something like this and he won't care because he refuses to believe anything. And that's why you got to drag him into court. And then all of a sudden the light goes on and they go, hey, wait a minute. This is really, so this denial stuff is serious, huh? All right, guys. The next clip is a short one. And this is why ExxonMobil is under investigation. So Judy, let's have, I think we're 26, please.
ExxonMobil is under investigation by New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman for allegedly misleading the public about the risk of climate change. The investigation comes after the Union of Concerned Scientists revealed over the summer ExxonMobil had been researching the risks of climate change as early as 1981. It also claims ExxonMobil had been funding campaigns undermining climate science, while its own scientists warned executives of the dangers of climate change. Now Schneiderman is subpoenaing extensive documentation from ExxonMobil, including financial records, emails, and other documents. ExxonMobil's Vice President of Public Affairs confirmed they had received the subpoena and were assessing its response, but said they reject the allegations that ExxonMobil had suppressed climate change research. Some see this as a chance to open up new lines of attack for climate change litigation. More attorneys general could join the investigation. And the New York Times reports people with knowledge of the case have said the inquiry might expand to other oil companies. At this time, however, none have received subpoenas. For Newsy, I'm Connor Hickox.
Go get those emails. You know how Republicans love emails. Get the emails and let's nail them. All right, now, guys, don't take my word for it. We're going to show you a clip from PBS in where Eric Schneiderman was interviewed, and I tell you, this is going to be very revealing to you. So, Judy, let's have clip number 27, please.
First, a new tack in the battle over climate change, going after energy companies for alleged financial fraud. New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman recently subpoenaed oil giant ExxonMobil, apparently seeking documents that might show the company had downplayed the risks to profits and therefore to investors of stronger regulations on burning fossil fuels. Exxon's history has been the subject of recent reporting by Inside Climate News. The Los Angeles Angeles Times, and others. The reporting has alleged the company misled the public about what its own scientists found about the risks of climate change and greenhouse gases. Here's a clip of a video produced by PBS's Frontline in collaboration with Inside Climate News, a not-for-profit journalism organization that covers energy and the environment.
Proponents of the global warming theory say that higher levels of greenhouse gases are causing world temperatures to rise and that burning fossil fuels is the reason. But scientific evidence remains inconclusive as to whether human activities affect the global climate.
We found a trail of documents that go back to 1977. Exxon knew carbon dioxide was increasing in the atmosphere, that combustion of fossil fuels is driving it, and that this posed a threat to Exxon. At that time, Exxon understood very quickly that governments would probably take action to reduce fossil fuel consumption. They're smart people, great scientists, and they saw the writing on the wall.
That a Frontline excerpt. I spoke earlier this evening with New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. Welcome, Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. Let me just begin by asking, what is it that ExxonMobil has done, in your view, that caused you to launch this investigation?
We've been looking at the energy sector generally for a number of years and have had several investigations that relate to the phenomenon of global warming, climate change, and the human contribution to it. So we have issued a broad subpoena to Exxon because of public statements they have made and how they've really shifted their point of view on this in terms of their public presentation and public reporting over the last few decades. In the 1980s, they were putting out some very good studies about climate change. They were compared to Bell Labs as being at the leadership of doing good scientific work. And then they changed tactics for some reason. And there are numerous statements over the last 20 years or so that question climate change, whether it's happening, that claim that there is no competent model for climate change. So we're very interested in seeing what science Exxon has been using for its own purposes, because they are tremendously active in offshore oil drilling in the Arctic, for example, where the global warming is happening at a much more rapid rate than in more temperate zones. Were they using the best science and the most competent models for their own purposes, but then telling the public, the regulators and shareholders that no competent models existed? Things like that. We're interested in what they were using internally and what they were telling the world.
And what law would be violated by doing this?
Well, in New York, we have laws against defrauding the public, defrauding consumers, defrauding shareholders. We're at the beginning of the investigation. We have to see what documents are in there, but certainly all of the claims would lie in some form of fraud.
Well, I'm sure you're not surprised to know Exxon is categorically denying this. The CEO, Rex Tillerson, said this week nothing could be further from the truth. In the company's written statement, they start out by saying for many years they've included all the information they have about the risks of climate change in their public filings, in their reports to shareholders.
We know that they've been issuing public statements that are at odds with that, and that they've been funding organizations that are even more aggressive climate change deniers. And they've made numerous statements, both Exxon officials and in Exxon reports, but also through these organizations they fund, like the American Enterprise Institute, ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, through their activities with the American Petroleum Institute. So directly and through other organizations, Exxon has said a lot of things that would conflict with the statement that they've always been forthcoming about the realities of climate change.
Well, let me read you, Attorney General Schneiderman, something else that Exxon has been saying. When they reacted to some of the reporting that was done on this, which is similar to what you're describing, they say these are allegations based on what they call deliberately cherry-picked statements attributed to various ExxonMobil employees to wrongly suggest that conclusions were reached decades ago by researchers. He said they were statements taken completely out of context and ignored other available statements at the same time.
Well, then they should welcome this investigation, because unlike journalists, my staff is going to get to read all of the documents in context, and they'll have an opportunity to explain the context of the statements and whether there are contradictions or not. So we're at the very beginning stages. We don't want to prejudge what we're going to find, but the public record is troubling enough that we decided we had to bring this investigation. Another area that where they have been active and we're concerned about is overestimating the costs of switching to renewable energy. They have issued reports, one as recently as last year in response to shareholder requests and public requests, estimating that switching over to renewables by the end of this century would raise energy costs to the point that it would be 44% of the median income of an American family. We want to see how they arrived at that conclusion, which we believe to be vastly overstated.
How do you draw a line between ExxonMobil doing research and talking openly about the debate out there about what is known about climate change, and on the other hand, advocating for policies that they think are going to be better for their own bottom line?
Well, there's nothing wrong with advocating for your own company. What you're not allowed to do is commit fraud. You're not allowed to have the best climate change science that you're using to build, and you're planning of offshore oil towers in the Arctic, where you have to take into account rising sea levels and the melting of the permafrost and things like that. If you're using that internally, but what you're putting out to the world directly and through these climate denial organizations is completely in conflict with that, that's not okay.
New York State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, we thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, I love the way he put it. You know, he said that Exxon said that the statements that were picked were deliberately cherry-picked, didn't he? And he said, well, good. Then Exxon should welcome the investigation. And guys, let's start the investigation. Put the cards on the table. If Exxon deceived us, they have to pay. All right, I'm going to try to take this call quick, but we only have like 7 minutes left. You're on the air.
Yes, Rich, I have to commend you. You've done a fairly good show tonight.
Why,
but I
thank
have
you.
just one real question, because I'm not in on the inside humor of it. Who is Uncle Joey?
Uncle Joey is my hottest T-Billy friend that lives up in upstate New York. He's a guy that put my bathroom in 30 years ago, and he's a terrific American that hates America. And he hates living wage and minimum wage, and he's the ultimate conservative. I hate to cut you short, but we gotta give the fair and balanced approach, and now we got...
and keep up with the fraud investigations. I think it will be telling.
Hey, see, we agree on something. Thanks for calling. See you next week. So, guys, we're going to show you, we're going to use Fox's approach, fair and balanced, and now we're going to show you Kenneth Cohen, the spokesman for ExxonMobil. So, Judy, 28, please.
And joining me now is Kenneth Cohen. He is Vice President for Public and Government Affairs with ExxonMobil Corporation. Kenneth Cohen, welcome. Let me just begin by asking flat out, has Exxon in any way misled or been dishonest with the public about what it knows about climate change?
Well, Judy, first, thank you for the invitation to come on tonight's program. And I also appreciate opening with that question, because the answer is a simple no. And what the facts will show is that the company has been engaged for many decades in a two-pronged activity here. First, we take the risks of climate change seriously. And we also have been working to understand the science of climate change. That activity started in the late 70s and has continued up to the present time. Our scientists have produced over 150 papers, 50 of which have been part of peer-reviewed publications. Our scientists participate in the UN's climate body. We've been participating in the UN activities beginning in 1988, running to the present time. At the same time, we have also been engaged in discussions on policy. And in the discussions on policy, for example, in the late 90s, we were part of a large business coalition that opposed adoption in the U.S. of the Kyoto Protocol. Now, why did we do that? We opposed the Kyoto Protocol because it would have exempted from its application over 2/3 of the world's emitters. Think about that. And that was in 1997. Going forward, if that policy were in effect today, it would have excluded almost 80% of the world's emissions. So that was not a good policy approach.
Well, let me ask you about one of the points that the Attorney General made. He said Exxon over the last few decades, in his words, has shifted tactics from taking climate change seriously, engaging in serious research, to, he said, much more recently, questioning whether it's happening at all. Is that an accurate, a fair description of the shift that's taken place?
No, it's not. And the facts are as follows. We have endeavored to understand the science of this very complex subject, as I mentioned, beginning in the 70s and running to the present time. This is a very complex area. This is a very complex system, climate. What we discovered, what our scientists discovered, working in conjunction with the U.S. government, with the Department of Energy, working in conjunction with some of the leading research institutions around the world in the 70s and the 80s, was that the tools available to science to get a handle on the risk, these tools needed to develop. And we, for example, were part of developing, working with others, some of the complex modeling that is used today. And today, that work continues. Now, on the policy side, we have to remember that ExxonMobil, as a large energy provider, one of the world's largest energy companies, we have a two-pronged challenge in front of us. We produce energy that the modern world runs on. And what we strive to do is produce that energy while at the same time reducing the environmental footprint associated with our operations and, most importantly, with consumers' use of the energy.
And I think people understand that, but I think what is striking was the Attorney General's comment that Exxon, what he's concerned about and wants to know is whether Exxon was using one set of scientific models to do its work in the Arctic, for example, where Exxon has been engaged in drilling, and on the other hand,
Judy, are you
telling the
coming back to
public,
me?
telling its shareholders a very different set
All right.
of facts
well,
about
guys,
the
I
state
guess we
of
got to
climate
turn
change.
it down. Once, you know, hey, we almost got the whole clip in. But you know what? That lady that called in made my day. I might go home and have a drink. I've been on the wagon 22 years. It's going to take a little bit more than that to get me to start drinking again. But guys, hey, you can see the tide is changing. It's turning. So everybody, and especially all my buddies on Facebook, you know, we got our Santa Claus cap up, so we'll see you next week, guys. Judy, how much more time we got? That's it, goodbye. I got to say toodles, toodles. See everybody next week.